Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. Could we please call the roll?
Commissioner Cavell?
Here.
Powell? Here. McGilvray?
Here.
Powell?
Here.
Charles?
Present.
Long?
Here. Sorry. Here.
Moss?
Here.
Woodward will be coming as ex officio. Markham?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next up, we have approval of the minutes from September 15th and September 24th, including closed sessions. I need a motion. Commissioner McGilvray, supported by Commissioner Charles. Do we do a roll call, or would you please prompt the vote?
Yep.
This is on approval of the previous minutes.
Okay.
Cool. Can you run point on it?
I'm thinking.
Are you not doing it for me?
Sure.
Okay.
I never sure.
Does anyone else?
Last term I was in.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Excellent. Next up, we have approval of the agenda for today. I need a motion. Commissioner Long, supported by Commissioner Cavell. Any comments? Please prompt the vote.
Okay.
Sorry. No, you are accepted.
It's believed to be the last is individualistic.
Oh, yeah.
This is cool. This is cooler.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas and 0 nays.
All right, our agenda is approved. Next up, we have public comment. Is there anyone from the public who cares to speak before us this morning? Yeah. All right, would you please state your name and the location where you live? Thank you. And everybody gets 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Catherine Kennedy. I'm from Lake Orion. And I'm trying to find in today's agenda, or the minutes from the prior meeting, where the action was that we moved $1 million from Homeland Security to the Public Communications Department. I have it in my notes. I don't see it in the minutes. So that's my first question. And it did appear in the executive's budget, 15 staffed versus the one that was approved back in October. So does anybody, I don't know if anybody has that information, if it needs to be modified?
This is not a Q&A, but you've raised the point, so somebody will take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm still concerned about the basics that are in these budgets, and an awful lot of activity going on. The biggest one, probably the IT, where we're converting to Amazon Web on all of our departments, even though I think it's an absolute identity crisis. It's a risk for identity theft to have all of our personal information out on the internet in whatever service. I don't care what it is. I believe staunchly that anything that has confidential personal data needs to stay on campus, physical, not in the internet. Whether it's birth record, death record, divorce documents, those have social security numbers. They have a lot of easy to manipulate, and we have a lot of occurrence in fraud in real estate. So by putting all those out into the internet is only going to increase fraud against the consumers of this individual county. And I actually do not believe there is a cybersecurity insurance company in existence that would be able to cover the risk that could be incurred by this actual move that we are doing and putting everyone's data out into the Amazon Web Service or whatever cloud service or whatever they ultimately are doing. It's something that I feel is absolutely too much of a risk for the community, and something the Board of Commissioners really seriously needs to consider and reconsider to exempt anything that involves personal identifying information. In fact, our IT interlocal contracts with the other cities have 2 paragraphs about confidentiality. So I don't know how we can say we aren't at risk if something were to happen. And I can tell you, I don't feel I can out-hack the hackers. The Russian hackers got the Columbia pipeline, for goodness sakes, and that's what we know about. So I would really ask you to sincerely reconsider that entire portion to make sure that any of our voting and clerk records that have identifying information does not go into the internet whatsoever. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak in public comment? Seeing no one, I will close public comment at this time. We'll move into communications. I need a motion to receive and file all of our communications. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Long. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Next up, we have item number 8, Economic Development and Infrastructure Committee recommendations. Our first item is the item A, the IT Data Center HVAC Improvements Project. This motion would be to recommend to approval to the board. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Cavell. All right. Do we have anyone? Yes, there's Mr. Murphy. Good morning, Mr. Murphy.
Good morning. I'm here with Steve Foster, our project engineer for the project. I'll give you a brief background on what we're intending to do here. The IT building was built over like 30 years ago and was, pretty state of the art at the time, but common practice and best practices for data centers now are requiring that HVAC backup systems don't share common chilled water, pipes, valves, and controls of any other type of system in there. So this is a project to, bring us up to best practices. We worked with IT. We've identified a standalone unit that will meet those needs. There's some duct work that needs to be done, and we're addressing some hot and cold airs in those server rooms as well. This was a competitively bid project, and it was approved part of our CIP plan. The project cost with contingency was $499,918. So we're seeking approval to go ahead and move forward with this project, and we'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Does anybody on the commission have any questions they care to ask? I don't see any speaker requests. If nobody has any questions, please prompt the vote on item 8A.
Commissioner Charles, is she?
She said that for a second.
Oh, okay. Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Appreciate it.
Motion carries. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have item number 8B, resolution on local government critical infrastructure planning grant program. I need a motion. Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. All right. It appears we have
Yes, I
Mr.
understand.
Ward before us, Deputy Ward.
Commissioner Spiz didn't realize it was referred to multiple committees, so I'll fit in for him. And Commissioner Cavell is partnered up on this project as well, so he's available to answer questions. So if you'll recall at your last meeting, it might have been the meeting before that, you assigned money for this critical infrastructure program. The intent here is to provide support to local governments to do the pre-planning, pre-engineering, design, all those types of things that you need to do in order to move a project forward for funding. Under the ARPA local fiscal recovery program, it needs to meet the criteria of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund program. So the policies that are before you that are attached align very closely to those two programs. We worked with Guidehouse to very narrowly define this, make sure we're staying in the right territory of eligibility. And so there would be an oversight committee that would make recommendations. Each individual project would then come back to the board for a final approval to release the funds and the interlocal agreement that would be required. So there's two categories in there. There's one to support a local government and disadvantaged community with that is receiving clean or drinking water state revolving fund dollars to replace lead service lines for administrative support and identifying where the lead lines are. And then there's the other category, which is a little bit more general in terms of, pre-planning.
And if I could also just add, this has been a great exercise in learning for me about how much paperwork steps there are required in getting something done. So I want to thanks Chris and Commissioner Spiz.
Full employment for bureaucrats.
Yeah,
We appreciate it, yeah.
It's amazing. You're like, there's another 3 steps? Oh my goodness. So anyways,
We tried to warn you, Mr. Cabral.
that's wild. Staying legal sucks.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, any of the commissioners have any questions or comments on this item?
Madam Chair, one thing Michael was nice enough to point out, I apparently forgot to upload the budget amendment when I put this in. I apologize for that. If you want to set this aside temporarily, I could get that prepared, or we could do it on the board floor.
Anybody on the commission you think it's appropriate if it shows up in the board packet? Okay, then let's just do that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
No.
if you want to see more.
I'll make Charlie fill out some paperwork for triplicate.
Oh, that's funny.
Wait in the line.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Lawyers, accountants, and bureaucrats, Full Employment Act.
That's right. That's right.
Any other discussion on this? I have a question. So with a lot of this ARPA money, a lot of the locals are starting to call us up and, how are we going to communicate this to the locals so that they know how the process works and that this money is available and can be drawn upon?
So we've been working with the commissioners on this on the administration side so that we can move rather quickly on this. There is one community, Royal Oak Township, that has received funding to replace lead service lines in a rather tight time schedule. So we'll be bringing back, hopefully if this passes at your board meeting, we'll have an oversight committee meeting rather quickly and bring back a recommendation, at least on that one. Our community engagement staff in the Office Department of Public Communications, who each have a district that is your local governments, are going to assist with this program, be in touch with your local officials, make sure that they are aware of the opportunity, if they need any assistance, to work directly with them. The Water Resources Commissioner's Office is also offered to be of assistance, technical help in evaluating, proposals and developing grant applications.
And also just in the 18th district, I've taken to, we get all those MAC grant opportunities, so I've forwarded to our city managers, and some of our city managers aren't always on email, so, a text ping, I know it's kind of informal, but that personal touch is at least gotten a lot of interest.
He's in charge of personal touch.
There you go.
The engagement.
Yeah.
And as always, we're supposed to be in, communication with the district, the communities that we represent. But some of us represent a fair number of communities, too. So I think the structure has to be in place that doesn't necessarily depend on us individually. I mean, it's a lot of money and should be able to just kind of crank
Yeah,
through
right.
it, so. Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Commissioner Powell?
What's the time frame on this?
So
Like,
it's-
when is it planning to be announced?
Yeah.
And, what is the time frame?
Sure, yeah, it's would be on your board agenda next week, Wednesday, correct? And then we would hope to have an oversight committee meeting if we can have a committee appointed within the next couple of days and then put out an announcement, So this
Okay.
one, we want to move rather quickly due to the time constraints I mentioned.
Okay, is there any and will there be a grant deadline for them to apply and stuff? Will that be implemented as well? Or is this gonna be kind of ongoing based on the need?
I think what we've discussed is to do a 30-day window, and then if there are unexpended funds, to come back for a second round.
What if there is a higher request for more?
So, as has been past practice, there's been a discussion about potentially increasing, depending on,
The need?
the need and, the applications and where we decide to go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing no one, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 8 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up, we have item number 9, Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee recommendations. First item on the agenda is item number A, FY 2022 MIDC, creation of the Indigent Defense Services Office. I need a motion. Commissioner Cavell, supported by Commissioner Powell. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having us. My name's Pete Mena, and I am the Chief Attorney of the newly created, or what will be newly created, assuming the resolution passes, Indigent Defense Services Office. With me is Mary Ann Yerge from Corporation Counsel. And as I said at the Lago meeting yesterday, Mary Ann has just been an outstanding advocate and a person who has built the foundation for this program that we hope to build upon going forward. There's two items encompassed by this resolution. There's the grant acceptance, which we do every year. We apply to the MIDC every year for a grant, which funds the provision of indigent defense services within the 6th Circuit Court and the 52nd District Court, since we are the funding unit for those district courts. The grant this year is basically $5.8 million, $5,799, and the statute requires us every year to contribute our local share, which is a statutory calculation based on the 3 fiscal years preceding the enactment of the MIDC Act, which were fiscal years 10, 11, and 12. So our local share calculation this year is $1.85 million, which you can see in the resolution. The second piece of this resolution is actually creating this new division under the County Executive Administration. The reason that we need to do that is because of Standard 5, MIDC Standard 5, which has been approved by LARA, requires that many functions which have historically been taken care of by the courts have to now be independent of the judiciary. So appointment of defense attorneys in all of our criminal cases, that's the big one. That has historically been a court function. That can no longer be a court function. It has to be independent of the judiciary. to a lesser extent, but still very important, the review of expert witness requests and investigator requests. So an indigent defendant who needs an expert or an investigator to assist in their case, those requests will have to be reviewed by our office so that it is independent of the judiciary. So that's the second piece of this resolution, is actually creating that division. Within our budget this year is a feasibility study that's already been started by the Sixth Amendment Center. The feasibility study is designed to tell us as a county what would make sense going forward, how we model our provision of indigent defense services going forward, whether that is a in-house public defender's office, whether that is contract with a nonprofit, which is how Wayne County provides a significant portion of their indigent defense services. And so those are the answers and the data that we hope to gather over this coming fiscal year so that we can include that in next year's compliance plan with the MIDC. So this was approved by Lago yesterday, and happy to answer any questions you have today.
I'll open the floor up to the commissioners. Commissioner Long, followed by Commissioner
Sorry, I hope my voice will
Moss.
portray. Is there physical room for the new people? Do you have enough room?
Yes, so that was part of the last year's grant and this year's grant, is building out a small space, not small, it's a good space, bigger than this, in the Legal Resources Center. So the people that will be housed here are myself, 3 current employees of the circuit court will be moving over, so they will no longer be court employees because, again, they have to be independent of the judiciary. And we will be hiring 2 indigent defense clerks who will be designed to provide administrative support and also back up the 4 district court clerks. We have 1 clerk in each 52nd district court. So those 4 will stay housed in the courts, and then here in our building we'll have 6 people.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moss.
Thank you very much. It sounds basically like we don't know what we've got to do. We don't know how much money it's going to cost. We don't know the extent of the obligation. We don't know, this is just an open-ended beginning on creating a structure that may have no upper end to it. Sounds like we really don't have any idea where we're going other than we're going to go there and we're going to pay whatever it costs to get to wherever it is when we figure out whatever it is. And is there any idea what a finished indigent defense department will look like, will cost, how many employees will be there? Any idea?
So I think that the statement that you just made is not true for 2 reasons. The first
Please,
reason,
I want it to not be true.
No, I know, and this is why it's not true. We know currently how we provide indigent defense services, which is through a managed assigned counsel system. So we know what our budget is for the court-appointed attorneys. They have a roster. If they want to be court-appointed attorneys, they get on our roster and we appoint in a rotation. So we know how that system works currently. We know that the long-term goal is to move into a public defender model if it makes sense for the county to do that. And we know that the data that we get from the feasibility study, which we're expecting to have in the spring, is what is going to tell us if that makes sense for the county or not. The money that comes out of the county's budget is that statutory local share contribution. It cannot increase by more than 3% or CPI. Anything over and above the local share must be funded by the state, by the MIDC. Otherwise, if they don't fund it, we are not required to comply with that standard. And so if we get from this feasibility study, for example, to your point, yes, here's what it will cost to fund an in-house public defender's office. Whatever that number is, we take that to the state and we say we want to form a PD's office. This is how much it's going to cost, and the state's either going to tell us yes or they're going to tell us no. But I don't think that we will know those numbers until after that feasibility study is done.
Is there a model anywhere that would be a working example of what it is that we would like to accomplish?
I think there are models. The difficulty is finding a model that fits Oakland County because we're fairly unique in the way in which our courts are funded. We have 4 fairly sizable district courts that we fund, which most other counties in Michigan do not have. So Wayne County, for instance, which has a much higher felony docket than we have, they contract with Neighborhood and Defender Services, which is a nonprofit, and I think that nonprofit provides about 35 to 40% of their felony appointments. If we wanted to look at a model for in-house public defenders' offices, certainly we can look to Washtenaw County. They've been doing it for a while. Kent County has been doing it for a while. But neither of those 2 counties have quite the size or the numbers that we have. And so I think there are good models out there, but I don't think there's anything that's an exact fit where we can say, okay, that's Oakland County and we can move into that directly.
Okay, so they can't say, gee, they're doing it at X county somewhere. We want to be like, yeah, no, Wayne County is almost, twice as large population-wise as Oakland. So, they would have. Okay, so we're still kind of shooting in the dark here.
I don't necessarily agree, but we could agree to disagree. I think we're looking for the data, and when we get the data, it's going to tell us the best way forward.
Now, here's the deal. In some ways, I and a couple of the other commissioners were kind of present at the creation of this, and we did not support it because it looked as if any certain commissioner and then state representative really pushed it. And the argument was, look, you are setting the county up for a very, very, very expensive program that could be actually essentially indefinitely open-ended. And where is the money going to come from? How are we going to do this? What's it going to cost before we sign on to it? Well, it was rolled over in Lansing anyhow, and we have to do it. But I would like to, sort of in sympathy to the people we were 10, 15 years ago, asking this question, how, what is it that success looks like? What is it that a completed program will look like? What are you moving toward, rather than, gee, golly, we want to let's just start incrementally building an empire?
Yeah, well, I think that success has a couple of components. The umbrella for this is the idea that the MIDC standards will improve the quality of indigent defense. You can quarrel with that umbrella idea, but that is the umbrella idea. So how do you do that? Well, you do it through different standards, increased attorney training, which we already have, the provision of defense counsel at every arraignment, which has recently happened, which never used to happen before. Standard 5, independence of the judiciary. Again, you can quarrel about whether it's a problem to have judges directly appointing defense attorneys who appear in front of them, but the argument is that could create at least the appearance of impropriety and the appearance of attorneys who only want to please the judge instead of provide competent representation.
Clearly.
And then the standards that have not been enacted yet, which we're still waiting on from the state, increases in attorney pay, defined parameters for this is how much that you will pay defense counsel, and we will give you the money to do that. That is probably, what fits best with your open-ended suggestion, because that truly is open-ended. Will that standard ever be passed, and will it ever be funded? But all of these things that the MIDC does and that we are charged with implementing in our county are designed to increase the quality of indigent defense services. That's the ultimate goal, and that is the structure that we hope to create to meet that goal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Moss. Commissioner Cavell, followed by Commissioner Charles.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say this sounds awesome. This is great for all the reasons you just explained as a retort to what Commissioner Moss was saying. And I'll just add that if we're going to fund courts and have courts and adjudicate so-called justice, then we need to follow the 6th Amendment of the United States Constitution and Bill of Rights and do that the right way. So I appreciate you.
Commissioner Charles, followed by Commissioner Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to just inquire, at any point, did we discuss this with our prosecutor and other stakeholders who might have some insight? If you could speak to that.
Yes. In terms of of how we move forward from here, or how we got to this point?
More or less how we got here.
Okay. So yes, there have been conversations with the previous administration, and obviously we sort of cross over when our last compliance plan was submitted to when we have a new prosecutor administration. I have had conversations with the chief assistant prosecutor, and we have a meeting scheduled next week, actually, to talk more about the way forward and to get their input, because they will be a key stakeholder in the feasibility study as well. So I think the best way to describe it is getting to this point has largely been a function of state law and the requirements that we have to follow. So it's definitely important to have the conversations, but at the same time, we're doing some things that we just have to do. Going forward is where those conversations sort of expand into, okay, we may not have to do it this way, but what are your thoughts about doing it that way?
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Charles. Commissioner Cole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I just wanted to say that I was one of those representatives who supported this when I was in the House. It's been a bumpy road because I think Oakland County had to fight and go to the mat to get the resources that the state was supposedly promising. I know our former Deputy Executive, Malcolm Brown, was at all these meetings, and I think there was a lawsuit or two that happened during this process,
There
but I
was.
still believe it's a very important process, and Michigan was kind of quite behind a lot of other states in how we treated our indigent defendants. So I do support this going forward. And just the two questions I have, I guess, are, first of all, when you say continued funding by these different positions, that means that this grant money is now taking that over?
Correct. The only, there's one position of the 10 that I mentioned that the MIDC considered to be supplanting. So it's a court appointment specialist who essentially the MIDC, initially my understanding from Mary Ann is the MIDC tried to make the argument that all these positions would be supplanting and should not be grant funded, but we were able to, and when I say we, I don't want to take any credit for that. Mary Ann and others were able to convince them that that was not true. And so 9 of these 10 positions are fully, included mine, are fully funded by the grant. The one position that is not is the court appointment specialist that they considered to be supplanting. So that is a general fund position.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Mary Ann, for your hard work, too. Another question, I just don't know if it's ever come up or if I've ever asked. I mean, how many indigent defendants do we typically have in Oakland County in 1 year between the circuit court and the 52s?
So
Any idea?
We have about 32,000 misdemeanor case filings in the 52s, and we have approximately 3,700 felony case filings annually.
Oh, okay.
So
Lot more
those are
than
a
I
lot of
thought.
appointments.
Yeah.
And we
Lot more
average,
than I
I
thought.
think, 900 arraignments a month approximately. So remember, there's an attorney at every arraignment, and
Right.
so.
And I also want to mention, because it hasn't been mentioned, we did a great deal of work with the community of Oakland County. We have interlocal agreements, and we've taken over the training of indigent defense attorneys for all of the district courts in the county, and including our own. And Pete's going to take over that grant administration with the Oakland County Bar Association, and they provide all of that training for the county's attorneys. And actually, that's being copied by Macomb County and Isabella County and several other counties. So it's kind of been a really great thing. We also, the county handles all the appointments of arraignment attorneys in the Oakland County Jail and all the police department lockups and the Oakland County Jail on the weekends for 10 district courts. We don't do it for the 43rd and the 47th. Right. So it's a lot of, I mean, we do arraignments every day of the year. So it's something to consider.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? I just have a couple of questions. So have we started this program of indigent defense different than we used to do it? Has the program actually started?
So the statutory requirement for implementing Standard 5, which again, Standard 5 is the independence of the judiciary, is not required to officially start until 180 days after we receive our grant money. So we are trying to be proactive. We won't receive our grant money until after board approval on the 13th, at the meeting on the 13th, and then the chair signs the grant contract. So we'll have 180 days after that by statute to fully implement Standard 5. Our goal, though, is to have it fully implemented by the start of 2022. There are some court rule changes that are taking effect sort of in companion to this process. And so our goal is to be fully implemented by the new year. But there are many pieces of it that we have implemented with our Circuit Court Criminal Assignment Committee, my review of expert and investigator requests. Those are all things that we're implementing right now.
Okay. And just to clarify, the other district courts get their own funding for this?
Correct. Indigent defense system is the statutory term, and you are an indigent defense system when you are the funding unit for a court. So we're the indigent defense system for the Circuit Court and the 52s. You know, Pontiac, for example, is the indigent defense system for the 50th. Farmington Hills and Farmington for the 47th, and so on. So they have their own grant.
Okay. But we do have some spillover in things like training, it sounds like, for the people. And so do we get compensated back for that training?
It's fully funded by the MIDC.
Okay.
It's passed through grant funding to the Oakland County Bar Association for that piece.
Okay.
And we are fully funded for the arraignment attorneys.
Okay. Those were my two questions. Anybody else? All right. With that in mind, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
We have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. Thanks
you.
for coming before us this morning.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. All right, next on our item is item 9B, fiscal year 2022 to 24, United Auto Workers Local 889, representing the Chief Animal Control Officer and the Animal Control Supervisor. I need a motion. Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. Good afternoon.
Hello, how are you all? Okay. So I'm going to give you a quick overview in general of these contracts, so I don't have to do it each time we go through here, but you're welcome. The UAW, as you recall, formed in December of last year, and then what we have here before you, you've seen in the past, are called supplementals. So in order to card check or to be recognized within the union, you had a choice to either come in by department or by classification. So you'll see a little bit of a combination of both, and these supplements clarify those particular departments, because most departments have different needs as well as different employees have different needs. So that's why you'll see so many supplements. I think we have 12 altogether. There'll be a few more coming forward at the next meeting. So this is, before you is the supplemental for some supervisors over at Animal Control. Again, as before, I had mentioned they are staying in alignment with the compensation study. And then here you'll see here, and you'll see a common theme throughout. What we did is memorialize what was already happening for some of those folks. In particular, you'll see clarifications in the boots allowance and uniform allowance, as you do here, clarification in working schedules, and if there is any on-call pay, clarifying what their practice is right now and memorializing it in their contract. So again, that's 3 FTEs over at Animal Control.
Okay, anybody have any questions or comments?
Does this mean Bob Gatz joining a union?
No. No.
That's That's how I read it.
We can talk offline. Okay, I don't see anybody wanting to speak, so with that, let's call the roll.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have item C. Same thing, UAW Local 889. This one is representing non-supervisory employees of Auditor 1, Auditor 2, and Auditor 3. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Cavell. Okay.
Again, as before, this is classifications within the M&B department, and again, just clarifying their ability to work alternative work schedules where needed, and should there ever be holiday pay and overtime.
And which department are they in?
M&B.
I'm sorry?
In audit,
Oh.
in compliance.
Okay. I'm sorry, the masks are.
Sorry, I
over
know.
there.
Apologize.
It's okay. All right, anybody have any questions about this one? Seeing none, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up, another UAW Local 889 contract representing supervisory and non-supervisory employees of the Management and Budget Department. Moved by Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner Long. Okay.
Okay, and again, this is the remaining department excluding the classifications that were just here in the M&B department. You can see here that boot allowance is carved out for equalization since they do a bunch of site visits and things of that nature out in the field. And there also is just to memorialize for higher classifications in assessing. They're really hard to come by. We have what's called a retention and recruiting incentive for those folks that reach a high level of assessment within the department. And again, just confirming their ability to work alternative work schedules and holiday pay or whatnot should that happen in that department.
Okay, any discussion? I just want to reiterate that these have all been negotiated with the unions. These are agreements that they have
Yes.
agreed to.
Yes.
Okay. All right, if nobody has any questions or comments, please prompt the vote.
Yeah, you would.
Especially for those outside jobs.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
I learned that too.
Thank you. Passes unanimously. Yes, boots are expensive.
They are.
Okay, next up, we have item E. Again, the UAW Local 889. This is representing the Sheriff's Office Supervisory Employees of Work Projects Supervisor. I need a motion. Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. Okay.
Okay, again, this is only one person within that unit, and again, very common, boot allowance, uniform allowance clarification, and again, where it fits and where it meets the needs of the department, work schedule, and holiday pay.
Okay, anybody have any questions, comments? If not, let's prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Excellent, passes unanimously. Up next, then, we have item F, the fiscal year 2022 to 2024, Investigators Association, representing prosecutors, investigators. Motion by Commissioner Long, supported by Commissioner Charles.
Okay. So just a friendly reminder, we do have 10 up this year that didn't include the UAW, so this is our first one. This is the prosecutor's office. They are just the investigators. There's 9 full-time employees and 1 PT&E in that group. Again, nothing crazy notable. We readjusted their wages to meet in alignment with the comp plan. They did get a 1% wage increase and/or a me also with the general salary increases, which many of the union, you'll see a common pattern coming throughout, which means that if whatever non-general or non-union gets, they get the greater of what they put in there. So they'll get the 1.5 as well. We readjusted their clothing allowance as well. Again, clarification on work week, and then rediscussed their benefits, which also are in alignment with the non-union. So.
Okay, anybody have any questions about this? Commissioner Powell?
I just seen something that said the wellness center. What is that?
So we have an opportunity where you can go get your blood work done with your doctor and identify your risk factors. And if you go and get that done, we give you an incentive so that you continue to
do
take
it.
care of yourself. Yep.
Okay, thank you. I just want to know.
Nope, I appreciate that.
Anybody else? So I'll just clarify that these salary increases, 1% or 1.5%, those are consistent with the compensation study that we did that actually took place over almost a 3-year period to try and assess whether the employees at Oakland County were properly compensated in terms of what they were making and, to retain our employees. And ultimately, it came up that we were going to give everybody a 1% or a 1.5%.
For this year, yep.
For this year. So that's where these numbers derive from. This is not a trivial, let's just throw money at people. This was really the results of almost 3 years' worth of compensation study that took place at Oakland County to try and make ourselves right with our employees and the outer world at large.
Yes,
Is that a correct statement?
They were the only ones that didn't have a wage reopener during that process. So we're the only ones that had to shore up in here. So
Okay.
we shored them up, but then we have those wage increases, and I promised Kyle from the MNB director that I would make sure he doesn't have heart palpitations during all these union negotiations. So far we're staying in alignment with our workforce plan for the next 5 years.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions? If not, let's prompt the vote. I'm trying to get you out of here on time, Commissioner McGilvery. Wednesdays are busy days for some of us.
Thank you.
Okay, passes unanimously. Excellent. Now we will move on to the Public Health and Safety Committee recommendations, starting with item A, a grant acceptance, fiscal year 2022 Automobile Theft Prevention Authority, ATPA, from the Sheriff's Department. And I see we have a couple of people with us this morning.
Good morning.
Under Sheriff McCabe.
Morning.
Gay up here. Moved by Commissioner Cowell. Thank you. I was having a brain freeze. And supported by Commissioner McGilvery.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is our annual grant award from the ATPA, Auto Theft Prevention Authority. The grant started it was a statute this past 1986. Michigan was out front of all the other. Michigan used to be the #1 auto theft capital of America. We've now dropped down to number 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. And it's a direct result of this program. It's funded by a $1 surcharge on insurance policies, and grants are let out by the ATPA in a competitive-based application. We have 2 teams that are funded by it. It's a 50-50 match. When the program started in 1986, it was 100% funded by the grant, and then it went to 75-25. Now it's at 50-50 because, unfortunately, it has not kept pace with inflation. There's only so many cars out there that you can insure, and we have tried. I was on the ATPA board, as a matter of fact, for a total of 8 years, and we tried many times to get it bumped up a little bit, try to keep pace with inflation, but that didn't happen, and that's fine. The program is very successful. It's a program that was modeled by many other states throughout the country when it was started. And like I said, we've dramatically reduced auto theft here in Michigan. We have 2 teams, one that's based at Southfield PD and is supervised by one of our sergeants. And the city of Hazel Park, Royal Oak, Farmington Hills, City of Detroit, and Southfield are all based there. Unfortunately, Royal Oak just had a dropout, and Commissioner Cavell knows because he was at committee yesterday, as was good commissioners here. Well, you were, I don't think you were. You're not in public safety. So anyway, Powell, Commissioner Powell. Anyway, the city of Royal Oak dropped out because they have a manpower shortage, a police officer shortage right now. So they're just not able to put somebody in right now. We are recruiting in the South End. We've tried Oak Park. They have a shortage also. Everybody's got a shortage right now. So we hope to fill that position in the near future, and that person, whoever it is, will be assigned to the Southfield office. Southfield has been generous enough to provide us with office space. It's really nice. We used to be housed at Madison Heights PD in the basement there. Not that it was necessarily a bad place, but we're a little better off with a nice office in Southfield. So, it was better than nothing, I'll tell you that.
A little shade there.
So anyway, Detroit has an officer on the team, and we have a deputy on one of the Detroit teams. So that's a great relationship that we have with Detroit PD. We started it many years ago. Many people, unfortunately, come from Wayne County and Detroit to steal cars in Oakland County and vice versa. So that has worked out really well for both the city of Detroit and Oakland County in terms of reducing auto theft in both areas. So as like I said, it's a 50-50 grant match. We're asking you to accept that grant today.
Thank you. I'll open the floor to the commissioners. Commissioner Charles? Oh, Commissioner Kowal, I'm sorry.
I actually did it right this time.
You did it right. I'm going to let Commissioner Kowal go first because she did it right.
Yeah, thank you. I take it that any of the areas that the sheriff covers, like Highland Township, would also receive?
Everybody benefits from this.
Okay.
Any department that wants to send their auto theft cases to us, to many departments that get auto thefts, then forwarded them to the two teams. Like I said, there's a team here in Pontiac and a team down in Southfield.
Okay, so if something happens in White Lake Township, even though they're not part of that, they can
Right.
still
Yes,
take
they
it.
can. They can take advantage
Because
of
it
it.
seems like a new phenomenon maybe is thieves actually breaking into auto showrooms and driving cars through
Well,
the
that
windows.
did happen in Highland Township at Schatz.
Zatz, yeah.
Zatz, I'm sorry, their dealership there on M59. Unfortunately, they didn't have a camera system or an alarm system installed there. I'm not sure what their insurance company thinks about that, but there were 4 cars stolen, trucks and cars worth over $330,000. Our team, in conjunction with Waterford PD, did a great job. We were able to recover all 4 vehicles. One of them down in Birmingham actually crashed, had some damage done to it. But, well, when they boxed him in, he hit a wall. So, but it was the Hellcat, actually, which is a $100,000 vehicle. So, but it was recovered, and it's rare that we're able to recover these before they're stripped. So,
Yeah, I don't get why they drive them through showroom windows. I mean,
Better than the door.
obviously they just, I guess,
yeah, the door was locked.
it's got to damage the car a lot just doing that, I would think. So,
Yes, it did a fair amount of damage.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
You raise a good point. I mean, their insurance premium is going up, you can bet.
Oh, yes.
What? That gives this mess.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Kowal. That was good questioning. As perhaps the most southern residential person on the commission who lives in an inner ring suburb, I can tell you that our Southfield Sun, when it comes to crime, it's always, car theft and breaking into cars. And so I'm happy to hear that you're working closely with our, local agencies, and I can't help but to be happy about that. So thank you very much.
Great relationship with the chief and the department down in Southfield, and Commissioner Powell, as you know, the city of Pontiac, we have a deputy, but he's funded by the city of Pontiac, because the 2 leading auto theft municipalities in Oakland County are Southfield and Pontiac. But they've been greatly reduced there, too. They're still, again, greatly reduced there because of the success of these 2 teams and success statewide.
People would just behave.
I think it's
okay.
important, though, that we remember that locking a car and making sure that your cherished goods aren't visible is also a great line of defense.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Good advice. All right, anybody else have anything they want to say before we vote? Let's prompt the vote, please.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, passes
very much.
unanimously. Excellent. Thanks for coming this morning. Okay, next up, we have item 10B, resolution for the appropriation for FEMA reimbursable pandemic response activities. It's the Department of Homeland Security is the one who brought it before us. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Long. I
morning,
see
Commissioners.
Mr. Hardesty on the screen. Good morning.
Good morning. My apologies for not being in person today.
Yeah, it looks like you're someplace nice.
I am home, but yeah, some workers going on here today. You have in front of you
We lost your sound.
You went mute. Turn your sound.
Oh, there we go. I hit that button. Love technology here. My ear. You have in front of you a request for an allocation of a little over $7 million, $7.089 million, to allocate for our estimated expenses related to the pandemic for fiscal year 2022 that would be reimbursable by FEMA. Over the course of the last year, we have submitted actually over $8 million in 100% for the pandemic only, reimbursing at a 100% rate. The largest chunk of this request, an estimated could be up to $5 million for testing. We are currently doing testing within the Sheriff's Office twice a month. That is in part due to a federal lawsuit that has been pending during the pandemic. And then there are potentially some other regulations coming down that could increase employee testing. So that's the reason for that. Other things in there include public communications. Communications related to the pandemic are reimbursable by FEMA, and then continuing our PPE supplies and running our warehouse. And then these purchases and any contracts we request that we go in front of the pandemic committee before spending is actually made.
Okay. I will open it up to the commission at this time. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Hardesty on this one? Commissioner Cavell.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Tom. Got a great backyard. Yesterday, when this came before Public Health and Safety, this is more kind of like a setup or a prompt for you. Part of this is also to create a shared services kind of interlocal agreement bid opportunity for local CVTs and their testing also, right?
Yeah, we do currently have a bid for testing. Our plan with purchasing is to rebid this. One, to see if there is maybe better pricing out there in case it's changed during this. And the other would be to open this up to local communities so that they have an increased need for testing to try to at least help them get the best prices possible.
That sounds very good, just knowing what I know about in the 18th district, Oak Park, for example, 17th and 18th, is going to spend at least $1,300 a week doing testing on employees as they return to work. And that's on the low end of things because they're doing a lot of remote stuff and they've called like a local emergency. So, and that's, $1,300 a week times 52 weeks, maybe. So it gets real expensive real quick. So I appreciate that, Tom.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. Anybody else? I know why I'm not seeing it because it's on a different page when I go to, Okay, if nobody else has any comments or questions, let's prompt the vote, please.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right. So that is, let's see, that was 10B, is that right? Yes, okay. That passes unanimously. Next up, we have 10.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Hardesty. Next up is item 10C, Appropriation and Grant Administration Plan for Mental Health and Wellbeing Emergency Room Services Grant Program. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Long. Who do we have to speak to this one? Oh, there we go.
Hi, Commissioners. Hi.
Hi, Hillary. Hi, Deputy
Hello,
Chambers.
good afternoon. So thank you very much. We presented this at Public Health yesterday. This goes back to a resolution that you all approved early in the summer. You'll remember that one of the early focuses of the COVID Recovery Task Force was on acute needs that were still in the community regarding the pandemic. And a common theme among all the work groups was mental health issues. And so you had previously approved the $10 million for the nonprofit grant around mental health. And then there was $2 million set aside to address an issue that had been brought to the county's attention regarding emergency departments in our hospital systems throughout the county. So they raised this during the task force, and then we talked to several CEOs of the local hospitals about their deep concern about their emergency departments and how residents were coming into the emergency departments with mental health issues, and they were lingering there for 2 to 3 weeks. This would be adults and an increase in pediatric patients. And they are basically waiting in the emergency room for inpatient or outpatient assignments. And so the recommendation and the program before you today would, for this next year, provide reimbursements to our hospital systems so that they could begin immediately assessment and mental health treatment for patients in their emergency departments while they were waiting for an assessment, in most cases by Common Ground, and a referral for appropriate inpatient or outpatient treatment. So this is really kind of a stopgap measure. I think that the hospital systems and Oakland Community Health Network will learn a lot from it to see what the experience is, but it will really fill an acute need that our hospitals are experiencing right now, where residents are not getting any mental health care while they wait in an emergency department for an appropriate referral. So we partnered with the Michigan Health and Hospital Association to administer this grant so that we could leverage their expertise. You'll see in the resolution, in the attachment regarding the program administration, that what we did is we talked to each hospital system in terms of what their estimated costs would be. And so there's a chart that describes what MHA feels would be the allotment by hospital, by emergency department system. And they would administer it, they would approve. This would be on a reimbursement basis. So the hospital would provide the care and then seek reimbursement for that treatment. Right now, the way the system works is they can only get reimbursed for an emergency department stay, not for providing any other care, which is why it's a broken system right now and why people are not getting the treatment that they need to get started while they wait for these referrals. So it would only last for a year. It would be administered on a reimbursement basis, and it would be capped at $2 million.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Commissioner Long.
I put my thing up. I don't know if it works. Sorry, I lost my voice. My children are very happy. But anyway, I'm just worried that maybe we need to include urgent care at some time. Is there any thought of that? Because, they tell us to go to urgent care first. I don't know if some do, but I'm just worried that maybe we should include urgent care at a later time.
That is a very good point, and I will thank you for that. And I will raise that with the hospital association so that we can explore that. Some of the urgent cares, are run by the hospital systems. So yeah, let me look into that. I appreciate that.
Just because we say to go to urgent care before ER, I don't, a lot of it. So I don't want to miss those people going to urgent care. Sorry about my voice.
Thank you, Commissioner Long. Anybody else? Oh, yeah, I got to go back and look at who signed up. Sorry. Commissioner Cavell.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Hillary. You had mentioned that this is a one-year program and it's addressing an acute need. Could you share any thoughts that you or the MHA might have about the chronic and lasting need related to mental health yeah.
Not at this time.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Long, you're signed up again. Do you want to ask another question? Okay. Anyone else? I had one question. I don't see all of the hospitals on these lists. There's a Providence Novi, there's Huron Valley, there's different hospitals that I don't see here. So would these funds only go to the hospitals that are listed, or was that more of a general idea, how to figure out how much money we needed?
It would definitely go to any hospital that was interested in participating, yes.
Okay. So then how would that be communicated across the hospital systems?
The Michigan Hospital Association will administer the grant. This was done to kind of give us a sense of what potential expenses might be to make sure that we were in the ballpark in terms of the cost of the program.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. All right, that's all I had. Commissioner Powell?
So, just to kind of piggyback off your question, was there a reason why those specific hospitals were the only ones that are listed in our packet? Are those the ones that we vetted out, and that's why they're listed, just to be like the start list? But this grant is available to everyone? I just wanted to know why we didn't list all of the hospitals that's listed in our
Because
county.
they were the ones that responded to our detailed requests
Oh,
about the
okay.
type of care that they were providing and the type of patients that they were seeing and the type of care that they would be able to provide and what the cost of that care would be. So each of these hospital systems responded to MHA with kind of a detailed summary of what they were facing.
Okay, thank you, makes sense. Okay, thank you so
Okay.
much for that, Heather.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right, if nobody has any other questions or comments, let's prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, 9 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much for coming, Deputy Chambers.
Yep. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay. All right, next item on our agenda is item 11, regular agenda. I kind of thought that's where we were, but. Next item is item 11A. It's contract with WellPath LLC Jail Health Clinic Inmate Health Program. I need a motion. Commissioner McGilvray, supported by Commissioner Powell. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Okay. We've been having so much fun here. It's just, yeah.
So thank you very much. I'm here with Gaia from the Sheriff's Office, and we're here to talk about one contract in particular to the Sheriff's Department, and then I'll be joined, I think the next agenda item is April from the Executive Office representing HR. There's a contract. So let me just give a little bit of a backdrop here. We changed the policy a couple of years ago on professional services contracts, anything over $250,000. Of course, our regular process, if there's a need for a consultant in a department, is still required to come in front of the commission, get that approval, and ask for that money if it's a brand new requirement. with a reoccurring item, and I'm pointing to the budget book, and I think you guys all thought that was behind you, but I pulled it out here today.
Mine too.
Part of that process was also understanding that there are a lot of professional service contracts. Now, let me just identify professional services contract. In this policy, what we identified as a professional service contract is dictated by the certificate of insurance that's required. If errors and omissions is one of the items that's required by the insurance company, we will call it a professional services contract. That's a term of art I want to make sure and denote, because in the contracting space, sometimes you've got a category called commodities. We all understand commodities, office supplies, fuel, whatever, patrol cars. Then you have professional services, which is typically consultants or legal services or any other thing that you might think from a professional. Health services, doctors, nurses would be considered professional. And then there's what we call MRO, maintenance, repair, and operation, janitorial services, people to clean the windows and so forth. So if it requires an errors and omission in their certificate of insurance, even though it might be a janitorial services, because I'm fairly certain the animal shelter would be considered in procurement language a maintenance, repair, and operation contract, but since it has an errors and omission, we consider it as professional services. So I just wanted to give that backdrop first of what you're looking at. Now, what we identified when we were working through this policy is we wanted to make sure anything that was expiring as a contract. Now, our general rule of thumb in procurement is to have a 3-year base contract with exercising 2 one-year options. So generally, and that is a general standard in public procurement, whether it's at the federal level, state level, or local level. That is a general standard of a 3-year base, 2 one-year options. As long as you have clauses that are termination for convenience, or termination for cause, you've got a lot of flexibility as a government entity that is asking for contracts. But I think that that's important because as we look and we wanted to integrate, the first question to ask is this a reoccurring need? Because there are some consultants, the executive office has had some consultants in this past year, but those are one-time items. So we would not expect to see them on the contract or this professional services when they lapse. Once we're done with the service, thank you very much, we're done with this. But there are a lot of professional services that are reoccurring needs by the government and by the county. And so we integrated those that were expiring in the next fiscal year, in fiscal year 22, the budget that we just adopted. So that was to give, through the process, the opportunity for commissioners to review that and ask questions. Hey, are you going back out with that contract? If you are, is it going to look the same? That was an opportunity for this body to take a look and ask questions. So I just wanted to provide that backdrop, and that's why this budget book looked different than the ones that you've received in the past. We had an appendix here with all the professional service contracts. So the one that we're here talking about today is on page 655. In particular, I think the item is 4989.
Sean, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Underscore something, if I may, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you. I just wanted to underscore something that Sean said, that, part of our appropriation process that we went through, that any of those contracts listed at the back of the book, again, this is the most transparent budget Oakland County has ever adopted. Across all departments that are at the back of the big budget book. Anything that was included as part of the final budget, the board has, in essence, given its permission to have these dollars continue to run the course as they currently are. This $250,000 threshold that we talked about, there's some in there. There's some that, were adopted, and then we pulled some of those to come before this committee and this board for review, and to make sure that we're exercising our appropriate oversight on these expenditures, particularly the big ticket items. And so those items that were pulled, to Sean's point, this is one of the things that are coming forward, the 2 items today, and then there were, I think, a total of 9 that we pulled out of the book. Going forward, I think it's important, and I think some of the questions that we asked today, as part of the budget review process, as we go through departments, I think some of these questions are appropriate to happen then. And I think there are some people that thought those questions might happen then, and I mean, they didn't always happen. And so again, as we go forward with all this additional information, to also be thinking about asking those questions when a particular department comes through talking about the individual budget, to ask questions about these. And in that process, if there are some that make sense at that point to pull out, that we flag it then instead of waiting until right before we adopt the budget. So I just wanted to, in terms of a big process, this is, really the statutory and constitutional responsibility as an oversight body that we're embarking on. That's all I had to say right now.
So the thing I want to point out here, as we look at this item and we see contract well path, what we're identifying there is what's in the budget book. That is who currently has the contract. So I think that that's very important to understand. That doesn't necessarily mean when the contract lapses. This one will lapse, I believe, the end of February, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, in 22. So that doesn't mean that that's going to be the same contractor. We're just using that as identification purpose, that is who is currently the vendor that is providing this service. So I just wanted to give an overview. I think this memo was provided. Is that right, Gail?
Yes.
And I don't know if you want to cover anything on the memo.
Sure. I'll just give a little bit of an overview. Obviously, we had started this bid process early. This is a huge undertaking, obviously, for the Sheriff's Office. Providing jail health services is no small task. So we started we worked with Sean's team in purchasing and directly with our buyer, following all of the posted procedures and policies as far as the bid process goes. You can see that it was sent out at the beginning of September and that the bid is already closed. So we've gotten 2 responses back. It's currently in evaluation, so obviously I can't speak to anything that's going on. I'm not on the evaluation team, but there are 6 members in subject area or subject matter experts in the Sheriff's Office that are reviewing these, and they are very detailed. They are very technical. Our scope of services is 25 pages long with all of our requirements. So we're asking for a turnkey solution. That's a huge undertaking for somebody to come into the jail. Obviously, we started it this early because if there is a transition, if there's a change in vendors, we need that time to prepare and to ramp up for that. So on the second page of the memo, we have highlighted some scope changes. One of the things that we've had to incorporate into this next contract is a medication-assisted treatment program, a MAT program, which I think most of you are familiar with that. We have an agreement right now with OCHN, but that's actually limited to Oakland County residents. So working with Corporation Counsel and purchasing, we kind of realized, okay, that program started out as a pilot program. It's still in existence. It's a good program, but we can't restrict that just to Oakland County residents. So we've been working with our current vendor and then obviously incorporated that. That's going to be a huge deal. Obviously, opioid use has become an epidemic around the country, and we need to address that in the jail setting. So obviously staffing and a pandemic section, because prior to this, we had never experienced anything like this. So while the population of the jail went down, that didn't make the work any less, because obviously there was testing, there was quarantining, moving people to the hospital. There was just a whole different set of issues that had to be addressed. So, and just like every other company, they had staffing issues, they had short staffing issues. Obviously, they had employees that had to quarantine. So we added those 2 sections just because, I'm assuming that's going to happen in every contract going forward, that we're going to have some contingency plan in place. Hopefully we never experience anything like this again, but obviously now that we know that we have to have that language in there. Also an IT review, because as you know, medical records are very private, and so one of the requirements is to have a comprehensive review of their IT system, whether they're going to be using ours, they have their own, and make sure that they're meeting all of our policies. Another one of the big changes, everything used to be done on paper in the jail. The inmates could submit a sick, like they call it a sick call slip, or a grievance slip or something on paper, while we've implemented smart tablets. So they get their mail on the tablet, they can do a sick call on the tablet, they can do a number of things on the tablet. So obviously now that's going to be a change. So we have a couple of things in there, and obviously if that system's down, then we need to have a backup system. So they have to respond to that as well. And then one of the big things is we normally provide the previous year's inmate population. And this time we had to give them a different sample. Here's our normal population prior to the pandemic, and then here's our pandemic level. So we're expecting to get, a sliding response or a different kind of response than just, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what we would provide for this many inmates that you always have. So, like I said, I have not seen the results yet, but that's what I'm anticipating is that, all those sections are going to be covered, and we're going to have to look at probably a new model because we don't know what the future holds as far as population numbers and how things are going to change. So, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. But those were the major changes. Obviously, like I said, it's 25 pages long. It's very, very detailed on what we need as far as comprehensive health and dental services, and it's a big deal.
Okay, I'll open it up to the floor, starting with Commissioner Cavell, followed by Commissioner Powell.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. First, this might be for Chair Woodward and Sean. I really liked the memo and the heads up, forward thinking, so we could have this conversation. Is this going to be something we should expect moving forward, or is this something that usually happens? And just since I'm new, I didn't know that that's what goes on, the memo type thing.
Yeah, the 12 contracts that were pulled, it is our intention to provide the similar format as we come before the Finance Committee and give a memo. Now, I will say the other 10 are not in the bid process. These two were, and that's why it was important for us to get in front of the Commission. I do want to commend both the Sheriff's Office, the HR Department, and certainly the Purchasing Department. I've been in a lot of places and provided a lot of advice and counsel for procurement. There is a lot of times, especially with a big contract like this, that people don't get things out on time, and pretty soon. The reason this is so important that it went out when it did is if it is expiring at the end of February, you need to account that there might be a potential change in the vendor, that it will not go back to the incumbent. And if there is a change, then you need that 3 to 4 months, especially with a service like health, to allow for that latitude. Otherwise, you get into a situation where you have to do an extension to the existing contractor who might have lost the bid, and they're going to jack up their pricing. So this is a responsible contracting and government services that is being done here as well. So I just wanted to make a comment to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So then another question about how these things work. There's something in our summary sheet that talks about the Finance Committee and Board can object to a contract in the form of a resolution within 30 days of notification. Does that mean if, say, for example, WellPath gets the contract again and one of the county commissioners doesn't like that they're involved in a class action lawsuit about being bad at their job, we would have until, would that be January 28th, 2022, or would it be March 28th, 2022? What's the 30 days? Or is it 30 days from now?
Well, first of all, the 30 days would have to do with if there wasn't. So was it in the budget appendix?
Okay.
The answer is yes, it was. We proceed with an RFP. We negotiate and enter a contract, and then we send a copy in the final over to the Board of Commissioners. If the answer is no, it wasn't in the budget appendix, then we do need to come over here with a resolution that needs to get filled. So there is an opportunity, for instance, if we didn't do our due diligence of crossing our T's and dotting our I's and getting either part of the budget or miscellaneous resolution, then we have to come before the commissioners with whoever the awardee is at that point in time. And then the Finance Committee would need to either say yes or no to that contract at that point in time.
In the future?
In the future.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you. And then, so I had a question for you, Gaya, about the medically assisted treatment. The one that's great to see, does that include, because I'm thinking back to what the sheriff has said about, I just remember when meeting with him, he said the biggest mental health facility in America is the LA County Jail, right? And I think he says that, right? Undersheriff's nodding.
I was going to
So,
say, I would defer to the
Yeah.
manager, but yes, we have.
so does medicated assisted treatment include psychotropic medication and all that sort of stuff?
No, it's a separate program. So this is,
Okay.
this is specifically for
Just
opioid
opioids.
addiction, yeah, so.
Okay.
But we already are doing, I think, what's the percentage that you?
43% of our inmates are on psychotropic meds.
And they receive those, though? Okay, they.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. Thanks.
So this is in addition to, so this is a change in the scope. That's already in, that's an existing, medication that's already being administered. This is a new program that we went to. And then there's some part of this, and we'll see what comes out in the proposals, but a lot of these are like a post-care or post-referral as well, too, because depending on how long their sentences, they could just be here for a minute, get
Right.
this, and then what are they going to do when they go?
Right.
So there would be a continuum of care, hopefully.
Okay.
That part of it as well.
Okay, thank you. And then just one comment, which is, I don't like WellPath because I've seen from looking that they're involved in a class action lawsuit in the state because they have been bad, not in Oakland County Jail, but elsewhere. That doesn't bode well, in my opinion, for them, or the quality of their work.
Okay. Anybody else have any, Commissioner Powell?
So recently, we had a situation in our jail dealing with intake that took place, and the individual was inspected or checked on. Is that nurse affiliated with the current vendor? Is it with this health clinic? Is that where that process is overseen? And if so, have that situation been addressed? And I just wanted that to be on our radar, because if we're looking at bids now, this current company made a huge, their nurse employee made a huge mistake. So I just wanted to ask, has all of that been in consideration?
That was investigated by WellPath, that particular incident. I know the one you're talking about. And yes,
I had to be careful because,
Yes,
you know.
yeah. And it has been rectified and proper action has been taken.
Okay.
It's very rare that anything like that happens, but, it does
Okay,
happen, unfortunately.
but just moving forward, I just wanted to bring that to my colleagues' attention because that all was associated with WellPath. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Clearly, we want to make sure that we have the best medical care at the lowest possible costs going forward. How is this? I guess there's two questions. The first thing is to say, so we're contracting out for this. Has there ever been any exploration of bringing these services in-house? Is there
They used to be yes, sir. They used to be in-house.
Okay.
And we contracted out many years ago. I can't tell you how far back.
Right.
But one of the advantages we have with this certain relationship right now is the head administrator in the jail used to work for us at Oakland County in our jail health clinic. And then the regional manager also used to work and was previously in a supervisory position for Oakland County. But when we contracted the services, they were both hired by this company and remained in our facility.
Got it. Have we explored possibly bringing, those services back in? And I just bring up in the context of, public health, the public health department. Has there been any analysis of that? I know that we're already out to bid in this process, but I think it follows that after every 3-5 year period of time that we should maybe be asking that question. Does it make sense at some point to bring these things in?
Well, it used to be under we used to be under the health department, not under the sheriff's office. And so this was contracted out under the previous administration, and it was the health department. They were not sheriff's employees. I should correct that. They were
health department
employees. Yes,
okay.
sir. The nurses were, yes.
So at least in terms of putting this out to bid, there was no consideration maybe we should bring it in. Maybe there would be cost savings across the whole organization.
Right. We were pretty convinced, looking at the way you used to do it, that it was much, much more expensive.
Okay. Okay. Related to that, so this is a contract that's basically $5.6 million annually. And in that, so how do we pay? Do we pay on a per population fee, or do we pay a flat rate on like a monthly basis? And like, does it fluctuate based on our population numbers? Obviously, we went very low, and did we get a savings then? Or was it a flat rate across the board?
Well, then that's offset too, because then you have the increased medication costs on some of it too.
So when
We
you-
do have an administrative, like a flat administrative, and then we also have a fluctuating amount, so it's actually both.
So it's both, okay. And that, I mean, and the idea that this, I mean, that we wouldn't be changing that, or, I mean, obviously, we've got 2 bids.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
it just
and
depends on, I mean, we've
how it
asked for, we have a fee structure in there. We ask them to provide the fee structure and how that would be.
Mhm.
And we get an accounting from them. I don't know if it's monthly or quarterly, but basically they have an analyst that breaks it all down, and then we look at all their reports saying, we were under budget because we didn't have staffing, or we were over budget because of, we had some overtime or something like that. So we get detailed reports from them on what happened in the prior period that we're getting billed for.
Okay. So particularly for medications and maybe other medical services, I mean, if someone has health insurance, do we get reimbursed from that, or?
Yes, there are copays.
So there are copays that are built into, the copays from the, that we cover the copay when they're in our
No,
custody?
There's an inmate copay. Yep.
There's an inmate copay, okay. And then, that's how they ask this question. So do we also go through a process to enroll people into healthcare, whether like Medicaid specifically? I mean, if they're eligible, I mean.
The federal government cuts off Medicaid and Medicare when they come into our facility. And my boss is fighting in Washington, D.C. right now to have that change because we don't think it's right.
Got it. No, it's definitely not right. Great. So, okay, you asked about the payment. The fact that we only have,
Medicaid, and you get arrested. Your health.
the fact that there's only 2 bids, I mean, is there a concern that either that there aren't enough players in this market? I mean, I guess I'm a little curious around, I mean, is there only 1 or 2 vendors providing the service in the jails all over Michigan? I mean, with only 2 bids, you got an incumbent and you got someone out there. I mean, do we have enough people in there to really help put the pressure to keep that cost down as low as possible?
I'll just make a general statement in regards to procurement overall, and then if the sheriff's office, Gail, would like to make a comment, or maybe Scott Guzzi, but I would say just in general, given the disruption in supply chain, we've seen fewer bidder responses across the board, not just here, in other places as well, because of the lack of predictability going forward. So there's a tentativeness and a drawback from some companies to be bidding, and we're seeing that not just in Oakland County, that's happening across the state. But I'll just make that as a general comment.
And then as far as just having the 2 bidders, they were given, any potential bidder was given an opportunity to do a walkthrough in the jail.
Excuse
and
me,
provide-
could you speak into the mic?
Yep.
Thanks.
So any potential vendor was given the opportunity, and at least one that I know of took advantage of a walkthrough in the jail to see the facilities. And then we also received, I know from at least one, a 60-question questionnaire about clarification in that. So we answered that as well. And I know those were all posted out there for all the vendors, all the potential vendors to see.
Great.
Can I add?
Oh,
yeah. Scott Guzzi's on the phone, I think.
Dave, the current well path actually is they assumed the contract we had from 16 from Correctional Care Services. They bought them out. And one of the other vendors that responded in 2016, they bought them also. So it's been a consolidation of the companies, and there's really only 3 probably in the whole country right now, if they're not just a local firm.
So we got 2/3.
Okay. Got it. No, and I mean, that's part. And I think, I mean, my sense is that there's probably also, I mean, obviously, the type labor market that everyone's facing right now, that, I mean, puts pressure on right now. And so that if we, move forward here, I mean, I would strongly, whatever the award is to have a really good evaluation 3 years out. Does it make sense to put out to bid to be able to possibly take advantage of some additional cost savings in a competitive market that's a little bit more flush with labor to do its work? If I can just talk a little bit about the evaluation process. And I know it's like listed on here of a lot, I mean, you said it was like 6 members, 7 members on the evaluation team?
6.
Are they all from the Sheriff's Department, or do we have cross-department representation on there? And
They're all sheriff's office, but it's a combination of administration in the jail, and obviously the subject matter experts that are working in the jail every day, and then my accounting team.
Got it. Okay. And then, I mean, I guess in terms, do we have, I mean, a mix of gender and people of color? I guess, I mean, we're evaluating this?
Yes, we do.
We do? Fantastic, okay. I'm good for now.
All right. Commissioner Cavell,
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
second time.
Yeah, Chair Woodward made me think of something. How many nurses or practitioners or people providing health care are there at any given time in the jail? If you just happen to know. I know that's not in the
I
documents.
don't off the top of my head, because
Okay.
obviously schedules
Yeah,
are,
right.
We're staffed 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Yep.
We also have a full-time, this is not through WellPath, but through OCHN, as you know, a full-time psychiatrist, 40 hours
Yeah.
a week. We're one of the few jails in Michigan that provides the psychiatric services. It's separate from WellPath, but the staffing is based upon, you don't have as many nurses on the midnight shift as you do on days and afternoons. So
Okay.
I can get you the exact number.
Thanks.
Because they're the ones that pass the meds. We don't pass the meds. We have nurses pass meds.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
I just wanted to make sure that I was clarifying a point when we talked about the 30-day requirement. That's if there's not an appropriation. So if there's a contract that was not identified and we're moving forward and there was an appropriation, we of course need to come back to the Board of Commissioners here. So I just want to make sure I was clarifying that point.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
This is like a receive and file or something?
Oh, yes, the recommendation is to go to the board as a receive and file of this report. Thank you. Commissioner, for clarifying that.
I'm sure you have 9 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Next up, we have item B, another contract, the Siegel Company Midwest States Incorporated Human Resources Benefits Consulting. And the recommendation here would also be to the full board to receive and file. So I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Powell. Good afternoon, again.
Good afternoon. You already heard my prelude, so I'm not going to do that again. But just as, again, a reminder, the Siegel Company is the current incumbent. It does not mean that that's the contract before you. It's the current contractor that was listed in the book. So with that, I'll turn it over to April.
Sure, thank you so much. Human Resources Benefits Consulting is very common throughout organizations who have health care benefits. The primary goal of this consultant is to make sure that we stay in compliance, which is very heavy in the HR department. It's the primary, one of their big focuses is making sure we're in compliance everywhere from our health care plans to COBRA, everything you can think of for both retirees and our active. So that's a big component of what they do, is making sure that we're in compliance. The other focus that they do for this particular area is they help us with plan design. They also help with all vendor management. So when we go out for bid for all of our healthcare companies, insurance companies, they're there to help support us in that area as well. They also, one of the big components and one of the big benefits of having an HR consultant for benefits is they also know industry trends. They're able to produce creative ways that we can save money. In fact, I just did a presentation to LAGO on our benefits task force. That's their primary goal, is to help us, give us those ideas and how that will impact our healthcare costs. This is the same scope of services that we've used in the past, and they are up for bid at this point.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you. I mean, compliance, absolutely critical and important. The cost saving side of things, and what I don't know about how this gets structured. I mean, do we have like a target goal? I mean, I would say our saving goals. I mean, are those goals that get developed like after we have someone in there working with us, or do we say, listen, we want to figure out how to either hold costs over the next 3 years or try to reduce costs 10% over the next 3 years? I mean,
Sure.
the cost for this contract to be able to help accomplish those things makes a lot of sense. And
Sure.
how do we evaluate that? And then if we're not hitting those goals, like what's the process that we would undergo?
Sure. So as Sean has mentioned before, we have a get out of the contract clause in there. But typically, through the process of interviewing them, we also ask them, what their experience is in those healthcare cost savings, some of their big success rates and things of that nature. So we tend to make sure that we ask those questions within the interview process, but if we're not hitting those markers and they're not providing us what we need to hit our goals, we would go back out for bid.
Great. I mean, related, and this is, I mean, I think something for us to consider, and something that Sean said reminded me, that as we, in the budget, appropriated money in the budget for all these professional contracts, we're pulling the ones that we look at that hit a higher threshold over the lifetime of the contract that's currently up to bid. We got a healthy, I think, number of bids in this, 14 bids. If a bid comes in higher than what we estimate the annual cost to be, then there's like this question of, well, we've kind of appropriated an amount based on what we currently are experiencing. If it comes in higher, then I think there needs to be some sort of adjustment, either through a quarterly report or something to reflect that. But if it comes in lower, which when we put out to bid and you get 14 people like fighting for this book of business, you hope it comes in lower, and then there's a margin of savings that's incorporated. And I just think that, I mean, the Finance Committee, I think, needs to discuss, like, how do we want to address that? I mean, so this is money that we don't need to expend. It's not licensed to go out and spend that money elsewhere. It's also not, we don't want to be gifting the dollars elsewhere. It's like, how do we want to track those dollars? It makes certainly, I mean, that those, I mean, again, that those saving dollars are incorporated and aren't not just redirected to other things. So I mean, more flagging and not so much a question to Deputy Executive Lynch here. But I think these are the type of questions, I think, through the finance, I mean, through the process, the budget process going forward, that we want to be very mindful of and looking at, and some sort of analysis, I mean, as these RFPs come in, because, I mean, we hope with a competitive bid process that we're going to get the best price. We obviously want to, I mean, we want the highest quality at the lowest price possible. And then how does that, I guess, that spread, how do we make certain that those, I mean, those available dollars are best being spent? And that's from an oversight and a budgetary perspective, that's our responsibility to be a partner with the administration, fiscal services, and all the respective departments.
We would encourage the departments, if that happens, that that would go towards their 1% to 3% a year, right, as a contract savings. So don't spend it somewhere else.
That's a joke, right?
Exactly.
No.
It's a way to pay for the
That's
1
a
to 3% expense.
Okay. Is that all you have?
Yep.
Chair Woodward?
Yes.
Next.
Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. We had the same question on the evaluation committee. Okay, who is on the evaluation committee? How many people?
So I think we had 6 or 7. I was on there. And
You don't have to give me names. I mean, I
No,
think
yeah, and then it
department.
was me, and then my benefits team, and then we had somebody from one of our chiefs over at Fiscal, who kind of oversees the Fringe Benefit Fund, was there as well.
Okay, good. And the reason I'm asking these questions too is, I mean, as we look, I mean, going forward and some of the priorities, I know that's been adopted as a county, I mean, reform to the procurement process to make certain that we've got like the right mix of people there. I mean, people inside the department, but people also outside the department, and
100%.
making certain that, and we've got a diverse pool of people, but knowing, I mean, the folks over there, the answer is yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Cavell.
Thanks, Chair. I just was curious, and you might have mentioned this, so forgive me, but the range in the memo of cost, the possible contract size is very big.
Well, that's actually the range of bids we received.
That's what you got? Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yep.
All right, anyone else have any comments or questions? If not, let's prompt the vote, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Charles. Oh, yeah, Gary, too.
Me too, but I'm waiting a minute. They can wait for me.
We still have a quorum, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
passes unanimously. Thank you. I just want to note that Commissioner McGilvery and Commissioner Charles have both left the meeting, not because they wanted to go have lunch, but they are off to the Parks commission meeting, which is at 1 o'clock, so.
And I'm waiting.
And Commissioner
Yeah,
Wong
and
doesn't like
Chris
parts.
is part of that, too. I appreciate you staying. We still have a quorum, so we have 3 more items to go. Next up, we have evaluation standards for the expenditure of American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds. So this, yes. I need a motion. Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner Cavell, thank you. Charles, Cavell, Charles, you guys, you know, it messes with my head after 4 hours of doing this. Thank you, Dave. All right. We have a motion. Good afternoon, Mr. Ward.
Again. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. If you remember, about 30 days ago or so, I was before you with a draft document. These are meant to be objective evaluation standards for proposed ARP spending proposals. Our hope as an administration was to enter into this jointly with the Board of Commissioners as proposals are brought forward, so we have something common and objective to look at and evaluate prior to proposals being brought to us, being brought to you. You provided some feedback during the meeting, and I made some adjustments and edits and sent them back over. So, I can go through those if you'd like or answer questions.
I guess I will open it up to the floor first, since we have seen you once before. Anybody have anything they want to ask Mr. Ward about this? Commissioner Cavell?
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Chris. There's an old version in the packet and a new version, and from my scanning and counting bullet points, I couldn't figure out what the difference was.
Sure. I can go over it real quick.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
So, the notes I had, one of the major points was there wasn't the detail underneath the county operations and services, so we filled that in. Chairman Woodward had brought up wanting economic security as well as housing and food insecurity.
Memo you sent around.
That Commissioner Markham had brought up childcare, so we've included that within the workforce section there. Commissioner Kowal had brought up, singling out sewer and water infrastructure, so that was, clarified in there as well. So,
So this is in the priority focus areas, not in the, when you bring a proposal before us for something, you need to change this way of thinking. It's just these different categories are.
So these are sort of broadly the priority for expenditure. Prior to that in this document are kind of the evaluation criteria.
Yes.
So that's where you're getting into leveraging and, equity issues, how it relates back to COVID, et cetera. Isn't it sustainable investments?
I was disappointed we had to figure out how to get a plan together still.
No.
Damn.
I saw John bureaucracy earlier, so I'm just trying to add another layer here.
Yeah, right.
Anybody else? Yeah, I just want to say that the purpose of this, in my view, is for us to have out in front of us a plan of how we're going to go about this. And we've all kind of agreed, not kind of, we will have agreed once this gets accepted, that these are the steps we're going to go through. And I think that's very helpful for everybody in the county who is trying to figure out, can we spend ARPA funds in a specific way? We've had so much money moving through Oakland County since really the CARES Act, right? And we are expecting we'll see more in the future. So I think this is a really good exercise and thing to have put together that says, this is what we're looking for. If you want to spend money, you have to come forward and answer all these questions. And I think that's going to smooth the process and also elevate the details to a point where everybody who is interested can kind of go, oh yeah, that makes sense, or why is that number 12 million kind of thing. So I appreciate that you did this. This is specific, I want to make this point, this is specific to the American Rescue Plan funds. This isn't related to CARES Act. It's not general fund dollars. This is American Rescue Plan funds. How will we define and allocate those funds to match up with what they're supposed to do?
That's correct, Madam Chair. Yeah. And I think it would be helpful with the proponents of proposals to help guide them in developing their proposal to meet, the objectives that we've set and you've set as well.
Correct. I have heard from the local governments as well as, people we talk to around here, how do we even get started, right? And I think this is really a great step for us. It's going to be traceable. It's going to be something that we all can understand. So thank you for pulling this together, Mr. Ward. It's one of your real strong suits that you can kind of sort through this kind of thing and have it make sense for us. So I appreciate that about you. I really do. Anybody else have any? Commissioner Kowal.
Just briefly, I wanted to add to that, it's a thoughtful approach. So I think it's a really good policy and a way of approaching how these funds are spent. Just being thoughtful about it, not just willy-nilly. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Anyone else?
I hate it.
Okay.
That's what we were looking for.
If we don't have any other comments, let's go ahead and prompt the vote. Okay, we have passed unanimously.
6 yeas and 0 nays.
Thank you. All right, next up is item D, 11D, other action, the evaluation standards for the allocation of Board of Commissioners proposed special project funds. And I need a motion for this. Commissioner Long, supported by Commissioner Cavell. This is, I've been working with Mr. Ward and others to just same sort of thing for our general, our proposed special project funds that we're setting aside for the board, so that as each of us commissioners or others want to make use of those funds, there's a process by which we will step through that as well. Today, the only action required is to receive and file. I am hoping that everybody has taken a look at the draft. And if you have anything you want to add or change in this, we still have time to do that. This is really trying to work up a process for ourselves among the Board of Commissioners for how we're going to evaluate our own projects. So does anybody have anything they want to add right now to this, or? I think after the caucuses have looked at this one more time, we'll bring it before for full approval. But we want this to be fully fleshed out so that the information that we're providing will be easily evaluated. Commissioner Cavell.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure I understood that if the study committee or the study group says, it's a great project, let's do it, the normal board, the BOC, Departmental and County Procedures, means that there'll have to be a resolution, so the study group can recommend it, then a resolution's crafted.
Right.
Then it passes, then the board votes on it as well.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, if you want to go, buy 400 widgets that
Right.
to do some special thing and it's going to cost $25,000, you do all that on here, goes through the process, goes to the full board to get approval.
Okay, cool.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? If you feel like you want to add something to this, there's still time, or if you want to have something deleted, so, okay? If there's no further comments or questions, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
passed unanimously. We're losing members. We still have a quorum, though. So thanks very much. Okay, that concludes our regular agenda. Next up, we have item 12, which is public comment. Does anybody want to make a public comment before we finish our meeting? Just for the record, please restate your name and location.
No problem.
We all know who you are.
Do we still have a quorum?
Yeah, quorum is half plus one, and our committee is 8. So
okay.
we have 5, so that makes
Okay.
enough.
I don't even see 5, but okay.
Well, Eileen just walked away for a second.
I'm just looking.
We still have a
No
quorum.
problem.
Don't worry, you're worth it to us, Ms.
That's
All those
okay.
others.
I know you'll listen, Charlie. Both Charlies, I guess, or right?
That's right.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Catherine Kennedy. I just hope you will consider and reevaluate on the additional departments that are being added to this county. I think we added 3 departments, if I'm counting correctly, the environmental department. Now we have the public communications department, and now we've got an indigent legal department. They're brand new departments. This is permanent inflationary costs for our county. And the government at the federal level is already creating horrible inflationary costs for our country. So I'm actually very concerned because the people that really get hurt the most with inflation, with the higher gas costs and food costs, are the very same people you're trying to protect the most, but you're actually doing policies that work against them more than you realize, is my observation. I actually used to work in finance for almost 4 decades, so I don't feel like I'm ill-informed of those matters. But I am very concerned because at a federal level, there's a lot of people that don't seem to realize all of the government we pay for. It's not, government does not create jobs, no matter what they tell you. It's the innovators and the entrepreneurs that manage the businesses that create the jobs. And our small businesses, before COVID, accounted for 70% of all the jobs in our country, pre-COVID. We have 25% of our jobs in Oakland County that are gone that I know of. Who knows in reality? I don't know if it's been updated. I'm seeing a lot of businesses with buildings that are vacant, and it concerns me that we're spending a lot of money to create departments when really it's policy that's more important. You can have a policy that you can no longer fill in wetlands and build over it. That will actually have more positive effect for the green environment than all these spending initiatives for everything else. We have an awful lot that we have self-inflicted on our country, self-inflicted on our economy, and we have people in Congress that don't seem to comprehend when you print money, all the money that's out there goes down in value. So everybody is suffering the same price increases and cost increases, and real inflationary is higher than I can recall since probably the early 80s. So I'm very, very concerned because most of the people that are living now don't remember how bad it was before. And what I'm seeing is the same type of conditions that created the disasters that we dealt with in the 70s. Thank you very much.
Your time is up. Thank you. All right, anybody else want to speak in public comment? Seeing no one, I will call the meeting adjourned at 1 p.m. Thank you, everybody.